This is Australia's top-selling vehicle, the Ford Ranger. And this newcomer, the BYD Shark 6, wants to be Australia's top-selling vehicle. Now, you've read the reviews, you've seen the Outback tests, you know this is a genuine contender. But how does it match up against the undisputed champion of the ute world? This is the highly anticipated heavyweight battle everyone's been waiting for, including me. So I'm going to flog them on-road and off-road to see which drives better. I'm going to crawl through the interiors and suss out the comfort and tech features, and we're going to check out the cargo capabilities. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty. Make no mistake, this is a genuine clash of the titans, and this battle royale will end in tears no matter which vehicle claims victory. So can the Ford Ranger retain its undisputed heavyweight title as the class-leading ute in Australia? Or will this BYD bombshell be a bona fide Kingslayer? Let's do this. The Ford Ranger is the defending champion and a global monster. Developed in Australia and built in 5 different factories across the globe and sold in more than 180 countries, it's been the best-selling vehicle in Australia for 2 years running and comes in a variety of different flavours with petrol and diesel engines. There's even an extreme desert dueling version called the Ranger Raptor, and how's this? The regular Ranger will get a hybrid version, a plug-in hybrid version, later in 2025. So stay tuned for that battle. Should be a humdinger. The BYD Shark 6 is the challenger in this title fight and a very different proposition. It has a similar look to the class-leading Ford, but its mechanical innards are very different. Doing away with the turbo diesel engine, the Shark 6 packs a diminutive 1.5-litre turbo-petrol engine. However, its purpose isn't solely to provide drive to the wheels, as it largely acts as a generator to recharge the battery. And it's that battery that powers a pair of electric motors. And it's fast, real fast. Arguably the most disruptive force in the ute or pickup truck category since, well, ever, the Shark 6 has generated extraordinary interest in Australia, leading to more than 6,000 pre-orders before any test drives had even been undertaken. There are countless flavours and spices in the Ford Ranger lineup, but what we have here is the V6 Sport, which is priced at just above $71,000. The BYD, meanwhile, comes in just one model grade, the Premium, and it comfortably slides under $60,000. Despite being more than $13,000 cheaper, the BYD has a lot more equipment and a lot more tech. Warranty provisions are similar, and although the BYD has a longer 6-year duration, the Ford has unlimited kilometres. So if you're doing big Ks, the Ford will have more appeal. Service prices are a very different story though, the BYD costing around $1,300 more over 5 years and also requiring an extra service compared to the Ford. There are several caveats in the BYD warranty that mean things like shock absorbers, bushings, wheel bearings, and the multimedia system are only covered for 3 years or 60,000 kilometres. Now, the Ranger has well-documented gremlins, but the fact that several crucial components are only covered by the warranty for a few years in the BYD is poor form and needs to be addressed. Despite the warranty concerns, the BYD wins round 1 by virtue of its lower price. That $13,000 uppercut lands a powerful blow. The Ranger comes with serious 4x4 hardware for on and off-road functionality, including a 4x4 system that is switchable, so you can run in rear drive to save fuel when you're on the freeway and four-wheel drive when you're off-roading. Plus, it's got a low-range transfer case, low-range gearing, and a locking rear diff. This is a genuine bush basher. It rides on independent double wishbone suspension up front and has a live rear axle with leaf springs at the back. Both are based on robust ladder frames, and they both have steel sump guards to protect the engines and modest bash plates. But the way the BYD's bash plate is designed means it's more likely to collect debris. If they were stacked the other way, it would be an improved design for sure. A quick side note on the ladder chassis underpinning this vehicle, it is rock solid. If you've ever seen Sandy Munro, check out the Munro Live YouTube channel because they do a great video. They tear the BYD Shark down and they show just how reinforced that frame is. It is strong. The BYD has no diff lock and no low range gearing. It's just got a lot of software and a few off-road modes to control the electric motors, one at the front axle, one at the rear. It has similar independent double wishbone front suspension to the Ranger, but the rear suspension is independent multi-link, which is more like an SUV, and that's very telling. So while you've got a less sophisticated setup in the Ranger, it's designed for load lugging and towing and wheel articulation, whereas the rear suspension on this is designed for more on-road duties. It's a bit more of a sophisticated urbanite, if you will. Footwear? Highway terrains on both vehicles. Now the highway terrain tyres are like a halfway house between regular road going tyres and all-terrain tyres, and you've got Goodyear Wranglers on the Ranger and Continental cross contacts on the BYD. The Ranger has a very solid 234 millimeters of ground clearance and an 800 millimeter wading depth. The BYD a little bit lower. That's 230 millimeters of ground clearance and 700 millimeter wading depth. The Ford has better departure and breakover angles, but the BYD has slightly better approach angles. But it should be noted, because this vehicle doesn't have a rear prop shaft and the diff isn't mounted as low as in the Ranger because it's got the live rear axle, it's probably going to be better on rutted trails. But to find out which is the better dirt demon, fast forward to the off-road section. That said, on paper, the Ranger wins this round. The mechanical beating hearts of these two pickup trucks couldn't be more different, but let's start with the Ford. It has a turbo diesel V6, which, in my view, is a very good engine. It's got loads of grunt from low revs and isn't too loud or clattery like some smaller four-cylinder turbo diesels. It's a more refined engine, and it drives the rear or all four wheels, depending on the mode, through a 10-speed automatic transmission. Then you've got the BYD's turbo-petrol combustion engine, which is almost exactly half the size of the Ford's at 1.5 litres, and on its own has barely enough mumbo to pull the skin off custard. However, when you factor in its dual e-motors, this vehicle generates a lot more power and 50 Newton meters more torque than the Ford Ranger's V6. The e-motor draws energy from a 29.6 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery pack of LFP chemistry, which can be recharged at speeds of up to 55 kilowatts, which is pretty good for a PHEV. It pumps out a muscular 321 kilowasps of power, but it only does that when you're in sport mode, when all three motors are working in unison. But in that mode, it will go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour very, very quickly, faster even than the Ford Ranger Raptor. But if you're looking for utility and not drag strip bragging rights, you're going to be disappointed here because it can't carry as much in the tray and it suffers a 1,000 kilogram towing penalty compared to the diesel Ranger, but more on that later. The Shark 6 features variable all-wheel drive all the time, except when you slot it into eco mode. That's when the rear motor shuts off for greater efficiency. The transmission is a single speed reduction gear. The Ford arguably has the best diesel in this class, but the judging sees the BYD take this round due to its quieter operation and monstrous power reserves. All right, the Ford Ranger. This vehicle was introduced in 2022 and still feels pretty modern considering it's a dual cab pickup truck based on agricultural underpinnings. I mean, you've got twin digital screens, lots of really good embedded tech, and a fairly thoughtful cabin design. Fit and finish is pretty good for you. You've got soft touch materials on the dash and doors with hard-wearing textured plastics here and there scattered around the place that aren't too scratchy. The driver's seat is power operated but not the front passenger seat, and comfort levels are quite good in general. The seat cushions are firm but supportive, and you've got two-way power lumbar adjust for the driver. I like the sport lettering embossed into the seat backs as well. I also like the fact you've got plenty of room to spread out. I've got two really good armrests here. It's nice and comfortable. The steering wheel too, it's covered in buttons, but that means you don't have to be reaching down and fiddling with the screen. Pretty much everything on the car can be controlled via these. The steering wheel itself is not particularly plush. It feels like plastic or vinyl rather than leather. Can we call it leather? Maybe, I don't know. The other thing that I do like about it, build quality. Solid door thud there, everything feels pretty strong. There's not too much movement in the plastics. Yeah, not too shabby at all. Alrighty, the Shark 6 interior, and well, it is streets ahead of the Ranger. From the moment you get in, it just looks and feels nicer. Like all the materials, every surface just has a higher quality to it, from the synthetic leathers, you've got the dashboard, the plastics here, and also there's a sense of solidity that is above the Ranger as well. I mean, the doors thud shut with the reassurance of a bank vault, and these grab handles, they're super sturdy. It makes a strong impression. Fit and finish is hard to fault. I've never sat in a ute like this before. It feels more like a high-end SUV than a knockabout hay hauler. All the materials are far nicer than the Ford, starting with the synthetic leather seat upholstery. It's so supple, and the cushioning is a bit softer too, although that may affect how it weathers over the long run. Both front seats are power adjustable, and they're heated and cooled, something the Ranger Sport misses out on completely. There's virtually no cheap plastics to be found. The doors and dash are covered in this soft imitation fabric, with all the switchgear and controls of a higher quality with a premium tactility. The gear shifter and surrounding toggle controls look and feel great, and I like the red highlights around the dash and the red stitching on the seats too. Those contrasting colours aren't overdone, but they do help offset the black on black decor. It's also got a higher fidelity stereo, a 12-speaker Dinaudio system versus the Ranger's no-name 6-speaker setup. This BYD is about 50mm wider than the Ranger, and you do get plenty of room to stretch out as well. You've got reasonable armrests, and the steering wheel definitely feels better than in the Ranger, both in terms of the leather finish, the quality, the rim's a bit thicker, it's nicer to hold. I also like the controls a bit better. There's not as many of them, so you can't control as many things in the car, but they're really logically laid out. And also the tactility of everything on the steering wheel is very nice. It's like BMW sort of quality. That said, this shiny grey plastic around here, I could do without that. However, in this particular round, the BYD has landed blow after blow, giving it a clear win. Storage in the Ranger is pretty good. It starts with a mid-sized bin under here. You can get lots of stuff in there. 12-volt socket as well. Two medium-sized spring-loaded cup holders that easily fit the 750ml drink bottle. That's good. There's another little section here for your phone. Plus, there's a wireless phone charger there. I like that. It's got good support around it, so the phone isn't going to go flying out. Another little section here, USB-C and A ports. And I like that both of them work with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Sometimes you get in a car and you bought the wrong cable, or it doesn't work with CarPlay because only the USB-C works, but you've only bought USB-A cable, so on and so forth. Then you've got a little shelf here. Again, chuck your phone in there, and it's actually pretty grippy. That's not going to slide around too much. Small glove box, sunglasses holder, ooh, auxiliary switches. So this is nice if you're going to add a few accessories, light bars and stuff like that. Easy to wire it in there. There is a door bin as well, but it only fits the small bottle. It doesn't want to fit the 1 litre Mega Gulp, which is, oh no, it does fit it. There you go, I stand corrected. Okay, the Shark 6 storage cubbies are pretty similar to the Ranger, only they're kind of bigger really. Start with the center bin. It's a bit deeper. In here you've got USB A and C and a 12-volt socket. That's all good, but one thing that is annoying is that only the USB A port works for wired CarPlay and Android Auto. It'd be good if they both did, but them's the breaks. Now you've got two spring-loaded cup holders here, which are plenty big enough to fit the 750ml bottle. That's good. And one thing I like about these is that they're side by side, so you never mix up whose bottle is whose. In the Ranger, they're mounted front and back. The flip side of that is if you spill your drink here, it's going to be really hard to clean with all these buttons. That's going to be annoying. The space here, again, is larger than in the Ranger. The wireless phone charging pad is also more powerful, 50 watts versus 15 in the Ranger. And a nice touch is that it's air conditioned as well to keep it cool if you're using the wireless phone mirroring. You've also got the small glove box. That's a lot smaller than the Ranger. This pocket up here is bigger. Sunglasses holder pretty much the same, and the door pockets are a little bit bigger and a little bit longer too. So you've got pretty good options in there. So this round goes to the BYD by a Persian cat's whisker. The Ford Ranger may be getting a bit long in the tooth, but it still has plenty of meaningful tech, actioned mostly via this 10.1-inch portrait-style touchscreen. And this runs Ford's Sync 3 operating system, and that is S-Y-N-K, as in two things syncing together, not S-I-N-K when something goes glug, glug, glug. More expensive Ranger models do offer a larger 12-inch touchscreen, but this thing gets the job done. The visuals are pretty high res, and response and refresh times and the way it loads menus isn't too bad either. It's a fairly good layout and doesn't take too long to figure out all the little details, from locking the rear diff to adjusting the autonomous lane keeping systems. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto work wired and wirelessly as well. You also get an embedded modem that enables the Ford Pass smartphone app for remote vehicle monitoring and functionality. I really like that the volume and climate controls are physical, makes them really quick and really easy to use. You've also got an 8-inch digital driver's display, and it's not the biggest in the class, but it does have loads of useful data and is probably one of the best you can get in a diesel-powered ute today. The reversing camera has middling visual clarity, but there are multiple camera angles, including a handy tow mode, not to mention a 360-degree overhead view and front and rear parking sensors. The Ford Ranger was once the tech king in the dual cab ute segment, but this Shark 6 feels like something out of a sci-fi movie and literally blows it out of the water. For starters, it's got a 15.6-inch touchscreen that has a cool party trick. The idea here is that when you're in map mode, you can read a bit more. It's also got a high resolution, sharper visuals, and touch response and refresh rates are also much higher because it's simply got a lot more processing power. Everything responds a lot quicker. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are in there, but the native operating system is so comprehensive you may not want to use them all the time. You can fiddle with pretty much every car system, from the way the petrol engine recharges the battery, to the steering and braking settings, to spinning the car around and even updating the wallpaper or using the built-in map system. The Google-based GPS satellite navigation in this vehicle is quite good, and I like the fact that it combines with the central screen, the 10.2-inch digital driver's display, and the head-up display, something you don't get in the Ranger, to show you navigation instructions across all three screens. It does make it very easy to find where you need to go. The digital driver's display has a much higher res and it's bigger than in the Ranger, but what it lacks compared to the Ranger is driving data. There's not as much of it, and it's not as customizable either. That said, the Shark 6 has way more tech, and it can be a little overwhelming. And while fan and temperature adjustments can be made by dragging 3 fingers across the screen, vertically or horizontally, I wish there were more physical controls for that. The reversing camera system in the BYD is also far more advanced than the Ford's, with sharper visuals and much larger imagery. You also get a 3D adjust mode that's missing in the Ford, and as you get closer to objects when reversing, it comes up with handy visual measurements in centimeters. The BYD is a quantum leap ahead of not only the Ranger in terms of technology and features, but any dual cab ute available in Australia today. And in that respect, and in this round, it has absolutely pummeled the Ranger and wins by a landslide. When it comes to safety systems, both utes get all the fruit, but the Ranger has 9 airbags versus the Shark 6's 7 airbags. It's also fair to say the BYD has far more annoying beeps and bleeps when cruising. And although its lane keeping systems are better, the Ford wins this round on points. The back seat in the Ranger is not too bad. I've got pretty good headroom here, legroom not so great. That's my seating position behind the steering wheel there, and yeah, it feels a little bit tight back here, let's put it that way. You do have adjustable headrests, which is nice. Amenity, it's okay. There's no USB ports, that's a bit of a bummer, but you've got a 12-volt socket, twin adjustable vents there, electric windows, 2 grab handles, always good if the driver's going crazy, plus a little bit of storage, seat back pockets, you've got the door pockets there, fold-out armrest with cup holders, always nice, and a couple of hooks up here for your jackets. There's extra secret storage under the rear seats, which is a nice touch, out of sight, out of mind and all that, plus twin ISOFIX and top tether child seat anchorages accessible behind here. The Shark 6's back seats are, surprise, surprise, better. Much better, and it starts with comfort levels. This synthetic leather upholstery, more supple, the cushion's a bit softer, the contouring is better, the seat backs, they're tilted back a little more, they're not as erect, and it's just more comfy to sit back here. It feels more like an SUV than a knockabout hay hauler. Legroom is slightly better, which is impressive given how chunky these front seats are. Headroom is pretty similar, and in terms of amenity, it matches the Ranger with its twin air vents, seat back pockets, door pockets, electric windows, fold-out armrest with cup holders, but it ups the ante with a lot more stuff besides. You've got touch-sensitive LED reading lights, and you've got USB A and C ports down here, and the pièce de résistance, a 230-volt power point, so you can plug in your laptop, charge that, you can put a toaster in and make some toast, and there's 3 more power points in the back. Tip top. It's a shame that there's no storage under here like in the Ranger, and it says no steps, so don't put any weight on that, but you do get the ISOFIX child seat anchorages here, 2 of them, plus you get the dual top tether anchorages there as well, like in the Ranger. So bigger, better, smarter back seat. That is another round win for the BYD, which makes me wonder, is it all over Red Rover for the Ranger? Not just yet. The Ford Ranger's tray is versatile and functional and has one of the best inventions ever. This nice step here on both sides. It gives you quick access to the cargo area, and if you've got gammy knees like me, it is a godsend. Plus, you've got handy clamp attachments here on the rear. Open up, open up, and you've got a drop-in bed liner. You don't have a damp tailgate, but it is easy lift. That's pretty sweet. Plus, you've got adjustable tie-downs on rails. That's good. LED lighting back there. There's another 4 permanent tie-downs and a 180-watt power socket as well. Not too shabby. This particular Ranger features the optional flexible rack system that allows you to load stuff on the roof a lot easier, and this solid cover here, the rigid cover. But these two on their own add around $6,000 to the price. And if it were me, I'd save the money and give myself a bit more space in the bed. The Shark 6 misses out on the secret side steps of the Ranger, so there's a bit more pushing and stretching to access the cargo bay, but you do get 3 power points pumping out a total of 6 kilowatts. These are 2,000 watts each, and they are a game changer because you could pretty much run half the work site on this truck. You could run air compressors, power tools, you know, you'd be charging all your batteries, whatever you want. It is very, very handy. My measurements show that the tailgate opening is a little bit wider than the Ranger. The distance between the wheel arches is about the same, but the bed length is about 10 centimetres longer, so a bit more room in the back there. However, if payload is important to you, the much lower 790 kilogram capacity in the Shark will not be cause for celebration, and neither will the 40% lower towing capacity. 2,500 kilograms in this compared to 3,500 in the Ranger. There's another issue around towing with this vehicle. When you plug in a trailer or you plug in the power cable to this, it disables a lot of features. You can only do 110 kilometers an hour when towing. There's no cruise control and you can't engage off-road modes, and these are big problems. BYD has said it can fix them with a software update over the air, and that is allegedly supposed to happen in the next few months. But yeah, if you're keen on your towing, this will definitely be something you need to consider. Based on these figures, the Ford Ranger lands a much needed sucker punch and wins this round. Now it is drive time and we're starting in the Ford Ranger Sport V6, and this honestly is still the benchmark vehicle in its segment. The ride and handling balance cannot be beaten, and fair dinkum, this ute defies its workhorse underpinnings. It really is that good. It soaks up big potholes and nasty road blemishes very smoothly for a dual cab ute. Dare I say, it's almost car-like. It's happy as Larry on open country roads and feels predictable and settled. And while there is some reverberation echoing through the chassis over sharper hits, it's better than most rivals. Handling dynamics are still class leading, and there's a sense of confidence and agility despite its significant height and weight. That this truck was researched and developed in Australia is noticeable and appreciated. Despite the old school leaf springs and live rear axle, this is a very well sorted ute. The steering has a slower rack speed than the BYD, and this benefits off-road driving, but it doesn't come at the cost of on-road capability, because this is a very easy ute to drive whether you're in the city or in the country. The V6 diesel is a bit of a brute. It's a torque tornado with 600 Newton meters on tap. Combine this muscle with a linear power delivery, an intuitive 10-speed auto, and rather nice engine note for a diesel donk, and it culminates in an upmarket feel. It brings an impressive level of refinement to the dual cab ute segment, especially if you're used to a 4-cylinder turbo diesel. It's a quiet and relaxed cruiser, and it's also a brilliant towing rig, as we've discovered on previous tests. The adaptive cruise control works well, but the active lane keep assist system is reactive rather than proactive. Switching from the driver's seat of the Ford into the BYD is kind of like switching your comfy sneakers for a pair of fresh runners. Everything fits, but there's more spring in your step. In terms of ride comfort, this moves the ute game forward by harnessing its more sophisticated suspension. It's clear BYD has put a lot of engineering effort into this vehicle, translating to an even more comfortable ride than the Ranger in almost all scenarios. It also has a little less scuttle shake through the chassis when riding over sharper hits. Despite feeling nimble around town and in the suburbs, the Shark 6 cannot escape its size and mass, and this is most evident on the open road. When you are navigating corners and things like that, it feels a bit more lethargic than the Ranger and doesn't track as cleanly through the bends. Don't get me wrong, this has above average handling, but as good as it is, it cannot escape its 2.7 ton curb weight. So while it has more tyre grip than the Ranger, which allows the front end to bite harder on corner entry, it takes a little longer to settle and has slightly more body roll. For the record, it's more than 350 kilograms heavier than the V6 diesel Ranger. The steering rack is a little faster in this one, and the turning circle is a lot smaller, both of which make tight maneuvers much easier and makes this a better urban explorer as well. When it comes to the powertrain, the BYD is an electric shocker, but in a good way. The dual E-motors generate instant and rapid thrust off the line. Fair dinkum, this thing boogies like Michael Jackson in the disco era. It is a thriller. It's alarming how ruthlessly effective the powertrain is. Fast, silent and refined. A car weighing this much shouldn't be so swift. Simply put, this plug-in hybrid system flips the script. It breaks the mold. It turns the tables on conventional dual cab ute powertrains. And most of all, it challenges traditional thinking. It's such an alien experience, especially because there is often no soundtrack from the powertrain. And the fact it has EV and HEV modes with the ability to manipulate the state of charge is virtually unheard of in a ute. However, on a couple of occasions, the engine did lose quite a lot of power and the engine got quite raucous. And this was on quite a twisty, dynamic section of road, a hill climb, and we were testing the ride and handling. And it's a bit weird, and it's definitely something we need to look into. When it comes to fuel consumption, the claims from Ford and BYD are conversely attainable and somewhat preposterous. Maybe if you charge the Shark 6 before every drive, you could meet the manufacturer's claim. But our real-world testing showed the BYD to be significantly thirstier than the Ranger. I will qualify that these figures were obtained during a road loop that involved urban freeway and some very dynamic driving. And since then, the numbers have dropped just below 9 litres per 100 kilometres, which is better, but still not outstanding. Another thing to note is that the BYD will not let the battery charge drop below 25%. So during our test loop in HEV mode, it spent a fair bit of time idling away, charging those lithium-ion cells. So which ute wins this round? Well, it goes to the Ranger. This vehicle is still the benchmark in terms of drive dynamics in the segment and has landed a cheeky right hook on the chin of the Shark 6. A quick blast on dirt roads reveals both cars are predictable and sure-footed. You can spear along at a fair clip in both of them, but the Ranger feels a little bit more agile. Now it is time for arguably the toughest test in this comparison, and I'm going to set the bar on a number of off-road challenges, starting with the Ford Ranger. First, I'm going to test breakover angle. So that is, oh, little tiny scrape there. That is basically how easily you're going to scrape the center of the car, that little diamond thing between the wheels, if you like, and that was easy as pie. Tiny little scrape, perhaps on the diff, up this smooth rock, and Bob's your uncle, no drama. I'm still in four-wheel drive auto, and the Ranger is just so confident and so capable off-road. It's going to take some serious challenges to stump this vehicle. And let's bear in mind that this isn't even on all-terrain tyres, this is on the highway terrain tyres. There really is a sense of effortlessness to the way the Ranger approaches challenging terrain. It is a genuine rock crusher. And now I'm going to test the approach angle going down this steep section, and piece of cake, easy as. We'll do that same run and test for departure angle. It's always a little bit trickier going up this one. You've got gravity against you. Oh, no, she's good. There we go. I was wondering, ooh, do I need to slot it into 4 low? Not just yet. All right, time for the obligatory water splash, and let me tell you, not all vehicles have survived this water splash. Easy camp easy. And then we've got the hill climb, and this is impressive. It's not struggling for grip, it's not spinning wheels, it's just grabbing and gripping. So confident. This is good. This is real good. This V6 is great. It's just as good off-road, and it's got really progressive throttle response. And I could say the same for the brakes too, just meandering down this decline. But yeah, that engine it's so progressive and so smooth, and it does suit off-roading really, really nicely. And it's so tractable, and it's got such a lot of torque in the low end. It really does make this sort of rough stuff a lot easier. Okay, let's try something a little more challenging, something that tests out wheel articulation, and I'll head up this section. Yep, she's cocking a wheel and I've lost a bit of traction there, so let's put it in neutral, put it in for low. We've gone from auto to low range, so we're engaging the low range gearing. I love how quickly it engages in this. You put it in neutral, you pop it in for low. Some utes, they take ages. There's these false neutrals, you got to roll forward and back. The Ranger is very, very good. It's a good mechanical setup and nice. Oh, yes. Not too shabby at all. All right, the final test is the chassis bender, thus called because I saw a Chevy Silverado up here once that got beached. So what I'm gonna do is lock the rear diff first. So we go off-road mode, click. Takes a while to boot up, and it's a shame there's not a physical button for this. You've got to go through the touchscreen. But again, super quick. That's locked and loaded, so this always makes me a bit nervous because it gets more and more washed out every time. Easy. Oh, little scrape. Oh, side steps, but oh, that is impressive. Okay, yes, bit of a scrape on the side steps, but the fact this vehicle gets up there as easily as it does, first time, very little wheel spin. It's a very, very strong off-roader, no doubt about that. Righto, the Shark 6, the moment of truth, and the first test is breakover angle. Let's head down this section here and see how she goes. Easy. Oh, a couple of little bumps there. I did take a slightly easier line, but yeah, that's not too bad. All right, the flat rock. Just got to double check what mode I'm in. Don't want to be in eco because eco turns off the rear motor. All right, we'll leave it in normal for now. And we're in HEV mode. Up the slippery rock. And, oh, can you hear that? She don't want to go nowhere. Come on. Oh, a little bit more. Okay, that's not going anywhere. That stinks like smoky tires. Oof. All right, let's back up a little bit. Maybe a bit more momentum. Oh, you know what? Let's chuck it in mountain mode. Let's see if that makes a difference. Yeah, I can hear the ABS traction doing things. That's better. So thus far, I'm feeling it's definitely not quite as confidence-inspiring off-road as the Ranger, and it's bigger too. Its physical size means I'm having to do a few more turns to get around some of these tighter spots. Not quite as effortless as the Ford, that's for sure. But you know what? I do like the quietness, even when the engine is wearing away, which I think it is now. Let's check the energy readout. And yes, the engine is wearing away, but it is so much quieter. And if you do flick it into EV mode, it is super peaceful. You could drop the windows and listen to the birds tweet and the kangaroos meow, whatever they do. Brake modulation is similar to the Ranger. It's nice and soft, which is great for these downhill descents. Now I'm going to test the approach angle. Hopefully we don't scrape the front end down this section. That was pretty good. That did it quite nicely. Well done, Mr. BYD. We'll try that same little dip with the departure angle. Again, always a little bit trickier heading up the hill. There's plenty of torque from the electric motors. A little bit of wheel spin, a little bit more than the than the Ranger, and again, it does seem to struggle heading up steeper, more challenging slopes. And I wonder if that's due to its chubby mass. An extra 350 kilograms of weight to push is not to be sniffed at, that's for sure. But look, overall, that did it quite well. Not quite as effortlessly, but not bad. All right, water splash mode. Let's hope there's no electrical fizzles, and well, none yet. And then we'll head up the hill climb, and ooh, yeah, this is struggling a lot more than the Ranger. The Ranger just picked its way up like a mountain goat, whereas this is spinning a little bit, finding traction. I can hear the ABS and stability systems trying to send power to the wheel that needs it. It's doing it, it's just not quite as proficient. It's not quite as fluid up those steep climbs. Now, these twin electric motors are hugely powerful, a lot of torque from pretty much zero revs, and they do give this vehicle plenty of capability. But while throttle control is quite soft and progressive, it's not quite as silky smooth as in the Ranger. You've got to be a little bit more judicious with that throttle, especially heading up steep inclines. Both vehicles have a front-mounted camera that switches on automatically, which is very, very handy for some of these tricky descents where you can't really see what the front wheels are doing. A very useful partner, like a spotting partner. All right, now it's time for the trickier section. That did stump the Ford Ranger. We had to pop it into 4 low. This is going to test wheel articulation too, because this one has the coil springs at the rear, not the leafs. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes on this. And oh, little bit of wheel spin. Oh, there it is. Front wheel up. Okay. All right, well, that's not too bad at all. I'm impressed. It lofted the front wheel, and we have tested earlier versions of this car which had more rudimentary software. They've updated the software and it is much better. It is able to pull the vehicle out of trickier situations. It's still not perfect, but it is a big improvement on the previous models, and it's doing most of these off-road sections reasonably well. All right, time for the chassis bender, and I don't have high hopes here. This has struggled where the Ranger has not, and it is, oh, it's getting through. Not too bad, let's go, keep it coming. All right, it's spinning the wheels. It's struggling a bit. Foot's to the floor, not really moving, slowly. Okay, good, good. Come on. Come on. Oh, oh, big scrape on the side steps there. Oh, oh, come on. Oh, yes, it did it. All right, that's impressive. It took a lot longer to do than the Ranger. The Ranger walked up it. This one was spinning and trying to figure things out, and yes, it leaned heavily on the side steps. It definitely scraped them a bit harder, but whew, that ain't too bad. Not too bad at all. The BYD Shark 6 is performing a whole lot better than expected, especially given its multi-link rear suspension layout. And though you can't just waltz into any track and pick any line like you kind of can in the Ranger, you've got to be a bit more judicious with wheel placement. It is fairly impressive overall. But at the end of this test, the Shark is not left floundering, so you might need to park some of your preconceptions about what this can and cannot do off-road. But the Ranger wins this off-road round decisively, thanks to its bigger toolkit and its tried and tested hardware. However, if we zoom out for a minute and look at all the testing we've undertaken on this comparison, it's abundantly clear the BYD Shark 6 upsets the status quo in the ute world. But in a lot of ways, this was inevitable because the dual cab segment has been too complacent for too long. How you intend to use your ute will ultimately dictate which one works for you best. And for some people, they simply will not consider this BYD due to its payload and towing limitations. This fight was cut short due to the postponement of the tow test. But even if the Ford had have theoretically won that, and it probably would, it still loses on balance, in my view, due primarily to that significant $13,000 price discrepancy. This BYD victory is sure to ignite plenty of digital fistfights in the comments section. And ultimately, it's not going to outsell the Ford Ranger for many years, if ever. But at the end of the day, the BYD is the surprise yet worthy victor in this heavyweight contest. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked the video. Don't forget to comment and like. And if you want to see what happens in the next battle between these two, do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.